think it's very important to start out saying that the data for the June 2020 employment situation was collected for a period prior to many states either halting or walking back their reopening plans due to the resurgence of COVID-19. In other words, we believe the June 2020 numbers are not truly reflective of the current employment situation. With that said, we'll muddle through. Hello, this is Bruce Steinberg of SteinbergEmploymentResearch.com reviewing June 2020 U.S. employment trends and developments. Although the Bureau of Labor Statistics continues to admit that household members are misclassifying themselves in regards to if they've been employed or unemployed, the official unemployment rate was 11.1% in June, supposedly down from the 13.3% in May and a high of 14.7% in April. The size of the entire labor force expanded by a little more than 1.7 million, which was about 40,000 less than the increase in May. The number of employed persons increased by almost 5 million in June, and the number of unemployed persons declined by 3,235,000. And there were more than 1.5 million fewer people considered as not in the labor force in June. After the number of jobs fell off the cliff in April with a decline of almost 21 million, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the economy added 2.7 million non-farm jobs in May and another 4.8 million last month in June. The private sector added almost 4.8 million jobs in June after increasing by a little more than 3.2 million in May and declining by almost 20 million in April. The private goods producing sector was up 504,000 jobs in June after adding 684,000 in May and declining by almost 2.4 million in April. Manufacturing was up 356,000 in June after adding 250,000 in May. The construction sector slowed to growth of only 154,000 in June after increasing by more than 450,000 in May. But mining and logging continued to dig itself further down a hole with a loss of 10,000 jobs in June following a decline of 19,000 in May. The private service providing sector added almost 2.3 million jobs in June on top of the more than 2.5 million it added in May after taking a tremendous hit in April when it shed almost 17.5 million jobs. The retail trade sector welcomed almost 740,000 jobs back in June to greet the more than 370,000 it brought back in May. The professional and business services sector increased by 306,000 in June. That followed an increase of 160,000 in May, and this was certainly a welcome return for some of the more than 2.2 million jobs lost in April. The education and health services sector was up 568,000 in June after adding almost 400,000 in May, which followed a decline of more than 2.6 million in April. Home healthcare services continued to recover with a relatively tremendous gain of almost 18,000 jobs in June after adding 3,400 in May. And as expected, the leisure and hospitality sector jumped with a gain of almost 2.1 million jobs in June after adding more than 1.4 million in May, but still has a long way to go before recouping the almost 7.6 million jobs it canceled in April. The total number of government jobs was up 33,000 in June. The federal government was up 1,000, state government was down 25,000, and local government was up by almost 57,000, with the more than 70,000 increase in local education more than compensating for the loss of almost 14,000 jobs outside of local education. Temporary help services again surprised with an increase of almost 149,000 in June on top of the upward revised increase of almost 47,000 in May. But this clearly does not make up for the more than 840,000 job decline this sector experienced in April. The June 2020 temporary help services data calculates to 1.7% sequential growth, which was not quite double the percentage increase in non-farm jobs of 3.6%. However, the year-over-year decline of 23.8% for temporary help services was considerably steeper than the 8.6% decline in non-farm jobs for the same period. In June 2020, temporary help services market share, which is a portion of all jobs, was considerably up to 1.6282% from May's 1.5750%. However, a year ago, in June 2019, it was 1.9519%, and 2 years ago, in June 2018, it was 2.0061%. By the way, the numbers regarding temporary help services are in conflict with anecdotal comments received from our staffing industry contacts and readers. More people consider themselves as having permanently lost their jobs in June from the month prior, and fewer consider themselves on only a temporary layoff. Specifically, almost 4.8 million fewer consider themselves on a temporary layoff, probably because they got called back to work. But 1.6 million more consider themselves having permanently lost their job in June than in February, which was the month before furloughs began due to the pandemic. As we've mentioned before, there is likely a large number of those who think they are on temporary layoff, but in reality have little chance of being called back because either there'll be no job or company to go back to. To quote a recent news report, there's not an economist in the world that's ever gone through a forced shutdown. It will indeed be a rocky trend line regarding employment and jobs, and possibly it will be next year before things settle down. This has been Bruce Steinberg, and this is just a brief sample of the employment data and analysis we provide.